What time is it? It's
All right, here we
7:29.
go. Oh,
We are.
look
We
who's
got a
coming
minute.
now.
Do
Lee
what?
Nora.
Nora.
Look at old
Oh,
Lee.
cool.
Our
Lee.
baptism.
Yeah,
Our
man.
baptism at the Davis Ranch.
Yeah,
Uh-oh. Got some other people. Hang on.
we're good. We're good. Mark Neely.
Morning, Lee.
Good morning.
Where's Lee? Oh, there he is. Where's lost
Oh,
Rodney?
hang on.
He's on.
He's
Here.
on here.
Yeah, okay. I got. Oh, I see. Yeah, I don't see, but I see.
Let's give it another 30
Yeah,
seconds. We've
I
got
am.
some
I
other
am.
people
I am.
trying to
I
get in
am.
here.
Yeah, yeah. We're fine.
Uh-oh. Yeah, we got some. I can't click fast enough. All right.
Josh.
Good morning.
Everybody.
Morning.
Hey, yeah. Okay, 7:31.
Got
We'll
one
get
more.
people. All right.
There we go.
There you go. Hey, and it might be, we got a bunch. It might be good to mute your video during it, and we'll have some time to talk about it, whatever. I mean, you don't have to, but I'm just saying, if you got a dog you don't want barking or something, I don't know. John. John's got all kinds of animals. Anyway, for some of you new ones, good to see you. I'm Gary Miller. Been doing this article that I hope all of y'all are getting. If you're not, you can go to the website and sign up there for the article that comes out on Monday morning. It goes to newspapers and regional publications and the individuals. I just picked up a new publication in Michigan, so glad to be on there. Also, as far down as Florida, so been doing this for, I think July will be about 22 years, and it's been the sort of the central point of the ministry. I tell people I don't get anything for the article from these publications, and I would be afraid to ask for anything because everybody would cancel the subscription. But it is the ministry, so it's what I do. But so good to have you here. Let me give you a couple of updates like we always do, and then we'll get into this. And let me say what we're doing from now on. A couple of things that's new. We've been doing this for 8 weeks now, and we're going to continue to do it all the time. And you can jump in whenever you want to. I know sometimes you won't be able to, and I won't either. And John up there will take over for me. But we're going to keep doing this, number one, and we're going to keep doing it. We'll decide. I hope this week, John and I'll decide on how often we're going to do this Bass Pro gift card stuff, and appreciate his company for sponsoring those. And then the other thing is we go from 7:30 or 6:30 Central Time to 7 o'clock. And Rodney had a good idea. And what we're going to do is same thing. I'm going to get done at 7 o'clock Central Time, and if you have to leave at that time, that's great. But I'm going to hang around here on Zoom if y'all got thoughts and questions or just want to hang out. So I'll be there, but we'll sort of officially let y'all leave at 7 o'clock. Don't forget, we got all these events coming up. The Hogs full, the Faith event's full in North Carolina, the turkey hunt in Texas is full. The golf in Concan, I'm going to play golf this time. It's Jimmy Ray, and just had one sign up. I think we've got 5 or 6 spots left open for the golf in Concan, Texas, April 3rd through the 6th, and that's going to be a great time right there. And we had fun. Also, we're working on another faith event in Texas in June or July. The trout event in Salesville, Arkansas, has got 5 or 6 spots available. John Davis's favorite event, and that's one of mine too. I mean, this dove hunt that Jason Mears, he's the host, main host. Dan helps him, but this dove hunt, it's around the Abilene area, right, Jason? Yeah. Around the Abilene area, we're still nailing that down, but that's in September 11th through the 14th. Man, I love that event. I love that event because you just get to shoot a bunch of shells, But I shoot 3 boxes of shells and hit 2 dove, and by talk trash the whole time like I'm the best shooter out there. So anyway, that's that. And again, what else? I told you the rest of this stuff. All right, we're glad you're here. And again, we'll do this and then we'll have some time to chat afterwards. Let me just read yesterday's lesson, article. I found a warmer day to cruise a property that I hunt. While I initially went to look for deer sheds, I really just needed to get outside and take in anything that was not man-made. But this time of year, it's really more than that. During deer season, hunters normally sit still in a few specific places. After all, we don't want to stink up our hunting area and cause the deer to leave. What we miss, however, are new sights and sounds. After the season, we can just walk and notice anything and everything about the woods and water around us. It's extremely therapeutic for me. Let me get my volume right here. I'm hearing whatever. It's extremely therapeutic for me to make these hikes and take my time to look deeper into this magnificent creation that we get to live and hunt in. One of the things I noticed this time was the previous location of a tree stand. Years ago, I hunted this spot because of a well-worn trail that came from a thicket across a small opening and almost directly in front of me. While I couldn't see in the thicket, I could most assuredly tell where the deer chose to exit. I'm not sure why they chose this place, but I didn't have to. I just positioned my hunting location according to what I could see at the time. But now years had passed since that stand was in place, enough years to turn that thicket into a patch of woods that I could easily see in and through, enough years to be able to understand why this path was the right path, and enough years to see the obstacles that caused the deer to take the route they did. What I couldn't see then, I could see now. That sounds a lot like life to me, especially now that I'm older. I know of at least 4 built-in God-given mechanisms that we're all born with and show up in our early childhood and youth. One is freedom. Another is to dream. A third is the wonder of a higher power we call God. And the last is for purpose. I think there is no doubt that a child's first question is why. For anything we ask them to do, they will always follow up that question. They follow up that ask with the question why, and we usually just say because I said so. But in this elementary question is simply their desire to know purpose, and we will live our whole life after that seeking the same thing. Many times it will be posited to God. Why God? Why me? Why this? Why now? Why here? And a host of other whys. All of these are our ways of asking for God's purpose. And there's nothing wrong with this. We ask it because of what we can't see. But what we can be assured of is that when we are uncertain about our purpose, we can be certain God sees in and through our thicket. Our job is to trust Him now, and maybe one day we'll get to see what God saw all along. Now, there's a whole lot in here for me, and I'm sure that you can see the big idea. It's simply this: that what God has done for you during your neediest times will do more for people than what you know about God, and we see this stuff. With this, what God does. Wait, now let me get my notes here. Oh yeah, okay. The big idea, I'm sorry, is this: that it's that through life we're going to go through situations that cause us to ask why. Namely, we ask those things to God, and we ask that because what we want to know is purpose, and because we just can't see through that thicket. And once again, it's God's way of teaching us to trust Him at a very early age. Now, those 4 things that I mentioned that are mechanisms, I really hadn't planned on talking about a lot about them, but when I started doing this study, I feel like they came out. Those 4 things that I mentioned that are mechanisms that God gives us when we're born, I won't spend too much time with them, but think about it. Freedom. when a baby is born, it's that baby crying for freedom. It was the Apostle Paul that said it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. And we have this innate need, this mechanism that God puts in us for freedom. There's no doubt that the gospel is a gospel of freedom. And we ought to find everything we can do and do everything we can to set people free, whether that's literally or spiritually. And then we have this mechanism that's a dream. And this is so important, and it's really encouraging because, a young child, they dream of being something. You notice as we get older, we start losing our dreams, and yet we shouldn't, because why? Because God put that mechanism within us at an early age. I always remember my middle daughter when she was real young. I said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And she said, "I either want to be a pediatrician or a cheerleader." I said, "Well, that covers pretty much the gamut." But we're all about dreaming, and this means that we ought to dream. We should not stop dreaming. Listen, nothing has ever been invented or discovered without a dream. And so dreams are terribly important, even as we get older. So we have this mechanism of freedom. We have this God-given mechanism of dreaming. And then we have this God-given mechanism of a higher power. That same thing. And again, it's so neat to me to think about this, because even, again, that child at a very early age, they'll go outside and they'll look up at the stars and they'll say, "Dad or Mom, who made the stars? Who made the sky? Who made this or who made that?" And it's their desire, and there's something within us that has this mechanism that says there's a higher power. I teach about this also to college students, and about no matter what tribe you go to, that's even uncivilized. If you go to an uncivilized tribe, that tribe will always be worshiping something or someone. People say, "Do you start out in life as an agnostic, which means you're just not sure? Or do you start out in life as a theist or an atheist?" But I think the proof is you don't start out in life as an agnostic and then you move one to the other, but you actually start out in life as a theist, because no matter where you go, people are worshiping something or someone. So God doesn't do anything by accident. Everything in life, those mechanisms, all of those serve as a compass to point us to Him and to His ways. And then that fourth thing is purpose. We ask why. A child asks why. It's our first relationship. When we ask why, it's our first relationship with purpose. And we ought to remind our children all the time. I think it's so important that we remind our children, our grandchildren, ourselves, and the people around us that God has given all of us and all of them, He has given them purpose. I believe that people commit suicide when they think they have no purpose left. They've lost purpose. And so it's in that. So God says you have purpose. But we ask the question, why? Because sometimes we just don't know the purpose. And in that is where we see this sort of juxtaposition between purpose and faith. You see, God has a purpose, and yet many times we don't know what that is. Sometimes we know later what it is, and sometimes we may never know. But He does that in order to accomplish how He wants us to live. This is not always easy, even to say this, even though you've heard it a lot. He does that in order to accomplish how He wants us to live. Let me say it again. He says, you have purpose, and then He puts this within us that says, why, God, why are you doing this? And yet He don't tell us at the time. Why did He do that? Because He's accomplishing in us what He wants us, or how He wants us to live. And that is, we're to live by faith. The just shall live by faith. And what does that mean? That we're to live our lives trusting Him and looking to Him and understanding that we don't have to know the purpose if we know the person. We don't have to know the purpose if we know the person. And you know that intrinsically. You know that there are people in your life you know so well that while you may not understand why they do a particular thing, you may not understand why they did something or why they're doing this. You don't understand all that. What you do, though, is you understand and know them, and you understand the purpose. You trust in them, not in sort of what they're doing. You say, you know what, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what she's doing, but I trust him. And that's the way that we're to live in relation to God. Now, when it comes to these types of situations, I always go back, and I hate it for y'all to hear this again, but because this wasn't my original plan, but I always go back, and this is so neat to me, and it's so, just apropos to my own life. But I always go back to Peter walking on the water, and to times in my life that how I've had to live my life, and how God has tried to teach me about faith, and it's tried to, and what I've had to learn about my demeanor, and what ought to be my demeanor as I go through these things. So, Peter came to Jesus, walking on the water. Let me just read that, and I'm reading it. Let me pull it up. I'm reading this in Matthew 14, and I know you know this. It's the story around that is so neat, though, too. Jesus was mourning the death of John the Baptist, and then he feeds 5,000, and then he sends everybody home, and Jesus wants to be alone, and he sends the apostles out into this storm that he knows is going to be a storm, and then he waits to the third watch to come to them. So here's how it reads in verse 22 of Matthew 14. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble, far away from the land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3:00 in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I'm here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you." Now, first thing you see is, you see a lack of faith in Peter. If it's really you, I don't, he says, "If it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. Now, this is where it gets neat. He says, so Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. And Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" And when they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped, and the disciples worshiped him. "You really are the Son of God." So Peter comes to Jesus, and here's what's neat about this story. And when we don't understand, when we need purpose, what's neat about this story and about Peter walking is that, and you've heard me say this before, I think, is that Jesus never caused the winds and waves to die. When he called Peter to come out walking on the water, he never caused the winds and waves to die. And as you've heard, if you've been a Christian for any period of time, you've probably heard all your life that as long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he walked. But when he took his eyes off of Jesus and put them on the winds and the waves, he began to sink. And that's where a lot of times is the uncertainty. The thing about it is not the fact, it's just we can't see inside the winds and the waves. But the winds and the waves represent the uncertainty of the circumstance. When you can't see through that thicket, it's the uncertainty of the circumstance. And it's this, and it shows up so many times in my life in a negative way, is the uncertainty of the circumstance and how it affects my mood. Okay, now I'm getting to something here. How it affects my mood. You see, here's what happens, and I can tell you, well, let me just move on here. When things are going well, I'm happy, right? I mean, when things are going well, I'm happy. When there's money at the end of the month, I'm happy.
Why are we seeing it the next day?
When the kids are healthy, I'm happy. When everything's going good, I'm happy. And when things are not, what happens? I'm not happy. And and the truth is, I go from one mood to another and here's what God tried to teach me, and I don't know if he's got it yet, but he's trying, is that real spiritual maturity is found in the one whose feelings are not fickle. I'll tell you what, let me say that again, that real spiritual maturity, real spiritual people who are really spiritually mature, what you notice about them, their feelings are not fickle. Because why? Because it's those who have learned to keep their eyes on the one who's called them out of the boat. You see, if I keep looking at the circumstances, my mood will fluctuate all the time. It just fluctuates all the time because circumstances change. But we've been taught what? God doesn't change. Circumstances change, but God doesn't change. So if we're going to fix our eyes on something that doesn't change, it's going to have to be God. And if when we do that, then our mood is not going to change as well. So I can remember going through a time and early on in my ministry when God was, man, I just went through a time and I can remember going through this and reading this story and I can remember how God began to teach me to trust him in things in my needs, when you step out in ministry. And I can remember me sort of going through this and talking and having all these different, fluctuations of emotions all the time because I go from one day to the next. And then God finally saying, Gary, listen, you've got to quit, putting your eyes on the winds and the waves, because here's the thing. Jesus didn't stop the winds and waves when he called Peter to walk on the water. He didn't stop the winds and waves. He allowed them to come on. Why? Because again, he's teaching his people and he's teaching us to live by faith. And here's the key to this and teaching us to live by faith is living by faith simply means this, that we're to live trusting God, right? Is we're to live our life trusting God. Now, if he keeps saying that we're to live our life trusting God, now here's what we know by default. It means that through our life, there will be opportunities to not trust him. If he says you're to live your life by faith, then it means that we're going to have opportunities in our life. We're going to have times in our life. We're going to have temptations in our life where we're going to have the opportunity to not trust God. Okay. So that means that when we get in these situations in our life that are uncertain, that we can't see through, one of the things we need to do is say, God told me that this was going to happen. And if this is what's going to happen, then I don't need to be surprised when it happens. But I need to more so try to focus on God and his word, and that he called me out of the boat than the winds and the waves around. And in that story, you notice that it was once that Peter was back in the boat, and it's when the winds and the waves stopped. What I compare that to is years later when you could see through the thicket, because at the end of that story, he says, all of them says, now they believed. Now they believed. And once you've been through some of this stuff, you're able to go back and say, I remember when God did this before, and I'll mention that. And God did this before, and I can trust that he'll do it again. So what do I do during these times? And maybe you want to do these same things. When I go through this, when I'm terribly uncertain about what's going to happen, or that I can't see through the thicket, or I can't see how it's going to end, and I have all these temptations to take things into my own hands and not trust that the person, but instead trust the purpose, or when I can't trust a purpose and I need to trust a purpose. First of all, what I do is I just remind myself of just what I said, that God's children are to live by faith, and that means that I've got to trust the person when I can't see the purpose. It means I've got to live by faith, that I'm going to have opportunities to not trust God And when I come into those opportunities, it's God building my life so that I trust Him and not the circumstances, and that I don't fluctuate. It's God teaching me not to fluctuate in my emotions during these times, because God doesn't change. So what I do is I remind myself that I'm to live by faith. The second thing I do for me is I tell you, this has been so important to me, is I remind myself of all the times that God's brought me through. You know, I just can't emphasize that enough, and may do a lesson on that. You know, here's what you see all through the Old Testament. What you see all through the Old Testament is every time that one of God's people had an encounter with God, they always built an altar. Okay? They always built an altar. And why they did that is because every time they could go back to the place that they had an encounter with God. And no matter what the circumstances were, no matter how bad things were, no matter how much they thought that things weren't going to come to pass, they could always go back to that place that God says, that they knew that God said, this is what I said to you, and it's still true. Abraham did. And then we see not only that, but we see it also when the children of Israel were crossing into the promised land. He told Joshua to have the people take 12 stones, one for every tribe, and stack them up on the side of the Jordan River. And he said, but so that when your children and grandchildren pass that way, and they'll say, Dad, they'll say, Granddad, what do those stones mean? You'll be able to tell them what God did. Okay. And that's what they did. So in my early years of this ministry, I kept a journal all the time. And sometimes I kept two journals, one about faith. But one of the things I'm embarrassed actually about a little bit, or a lot, maybe, I don't know. In those journals are all the times that I wrote that the end had came. You know, that the end had come. You know, that it was over, that it was defunct, you know, that it wasn't going to make it, and all this stuff. I don't know how many times I wrote in that journal, you know, the epitaph of Outdoor Truths. And you know what? I'm here today with you 22 years later. And I've been able, at times, I've had to at times go back and say, you know what? Just as God brought me through the past, He's going to bring me through the present. And I can remember, last on this, I can remember it's probably, you know, less than 6 months ago. I go up to my happy place, the place that I gripe to God and fuss at God and, you know, do whatever. And I can remember walking out to this little field that when I hunt, it's a food plot. And I walked out through this field and I'm crying to God, and, you know, and God just like immediately says, like, Gary, just shut up, man. You know, I've always brought you through, and I'm going to bring you through now. And it was like, lesson learned, God, I shut up. Let's go fishing. You know, and it was just so obvious. So, gosh, guys, if you're going through something right now, I would encourage you to start journaling. And if you think the end's near right now, start journaling. And I promise you, God's got you, and He's going to bring you through. And then the last thing I do is I just remind myself, well, like we've said before, is when I can't see the purpose, I just trust the person. I can trust God. I don't know why God's doing it this way. I don't know why God's doing it that way. I can't see what God sees, but I know God well enough that I've just got to trust Him. And so that's what I try to do, even though it's still hard sometimes to this day. It's still hard. So let me pray for you. We're going to draw names for a gift card, and then we'll hang around, and everybody who wants to, and you can talk or do whatever. I'll be here. Lord, thank you for these guys. And I know out of this many people here that there are some who sort of done wrote their epitaph. They've sort of wrote the end has come, and it's not. That don't mean that the outcome will be exactly what we want. We don't know that, but we know that we can trust you as our Father, as our friend, as a person who wants to provide and protect us. And God, I pray for anybody here that's just discouraged at this time, that you would encourage them with the truth that, you know what, you're not going to leave them, you're not going to forsake them, you're going to provide, you're going to protect. I pray for their families, their churches. I pray that you bless them physically and financially and socially and emotionally and mentally. Bless their businesses, their places of employment, God, and use them this week. Let us portray you as you really are as we go out. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Jeff, you got a name?
Amen.
Yeah. You got to get faster. You're muted.
There's 26 people here, Gary. Hang on just a second.
6 people.
Gary, great word this morning, man.
Thank you, buddy. I tell you what, most of y'all don't know. I spent all day Sunday night, starting Sunday night at 11:30 till yesterday morning about 6 o'clock, basically throwing up every hour. And I stayed in bed all day. Then yesterday, and then I slept pretty good last night and got up not knowing what I was going to feel like this morning, but I'm good.
Huh.
What happened?
There we go.
Uh-oh. Lee Norris, that's ridiculous. That's rigged.
I know, that's what I was thinking, but
Sounds rigged.
That's rigged.
I know. That's really
Congratulations, Lee.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, John.
Hey, Lee, just text me. I think you still got my number, unless you've deleted me and all your socials. Send me your mailing address. I'll get it to you.
Yes, sir.
All right, man.
That's crazy.
Now, anybody who needs to leave, we understand perfectly. So you cut out of here if you need me. I mean it. If you need me, you got my number. If you don't, get my number, and we'll and I'll be glad to. We can get together and talk. And but you're welcome to leave. And anybody that wants to stick around and make some comments or have some questions, I'm here. Like a bad comedian, I'm here.
Hey, real quick, I'd like to say something. Gary touched on early on as far as receiving the weekly his weekly writings. You can go to outdoortruths.org and go to the sign up place. Jeff, can you go to the home screen?
Hang on a second.
I think Jess
It's at the top right.
manipulating
It's at the top right where you can join the newsletter.
There you go. Yeah. So if you're not receiving the weekly writings, we encourage you to do that. And that's what Gary read from this morning. And that's kind of where it starts each week, is going through his writing. So, and then we break it down, or he breaks it down with the big idea.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Good to see everybody, man. Who got a thought?
Clicking on the events that are coming up. Gary touched on that too, showing the ones they're kind of in chronologically in order. And the first several are already full, but we encourage you for next year, because we try to do the same events, sometimes new locations, but the same type of events each year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think down to golf right there is where we have some openings. And then some of these are later on in the year. They're just hadn't filled up yet.
Yeah. Still need some sponsors for some of those events if you are interested.
I think I'm going to get Rick. Rick will be back in on Wednesday. I forgot to ask him, but I think Rick will probably do the sponsor for us.
Okay. Yeah.
So
there's Sam Hall. Good to see Sam, my buddy.
Morning.
I needed you day before yesterday. You know where to be found.
I know it. I'm dealing with all that same stuff with 80 million people here too.
Are you?
It's going around.
He's a nurse practitioner in the great city of Abilene, I guess. Is it Abilene?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Which means he's worthless to me.
Between doing that and coaching baseball with Chase, it's a full-time job.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Hey, one other quick thing, and there a lot of these new people are still on here. Just welcome and thank you for joining. If you've got any input or comments, please share them, and we're just glad that you're here.
Yeah. Anybody got a thought about your own thicket and how we can pray for you maybe later? No, everybody good?
I mean, I was thinking about Gary, what you said about like when you're walking and you can't see, trust the person. There was a saying that was said, trust God when you can't trace him, even when you can't trace him, because
Yeah.
sometimes we just don't know, what the purpose or the reason or, and we just
Yeah.
got to trust him. Got to trust
Yeah.
him through the process, through the pain, through the, what
Yeah.
we're dealing with. So,
I tell you, if you ever get a chance, and John's working on one. Where's Scott's place at? I know you told me 5 times. I forget.
It's northwest of Abilene.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're working on that.
Aspermont.
If you ever Aspermont,
Yes.
okay. We're working on a faith event there, and we counting me. We really don't want more than 10 people, but and we'll work on another place in Texas, and even we do a series 2. But man, I tell you, if you ever get a chance to come to one of these faith events, and you'll know it. We said it in the beginning. Really is. When I first did these, we didn't even put it public. We sort of just called a few people and basically I said, listen, if you sort of know if you need to come or not. We feel like whoever God wants there will be there, and it sounds cheesy, but it's the truth, because it's in depth. It's fun, but if you ever, I think, get a chance to come to one of these faith events, they're free. Try to come to one of those. Faith changed my life, 15 years ago or longer, actually. Just FYI, I started doing these wild game. What started the ministry? I was doing articles, and I was getting invited to do wild game dinners for churches and things like that. And then all of a sudden, I didn't know how it happened. All of a sudden, I began to get asked to do these little men's conferences and things on faith, and I called it Life's Greatest Adventure, Living by Faith. And so. And what I tell people is this: God used me in the beginning, and he still does, and I ain't bragging, but I've seen a lot of people lives changed through Outdoor Truths. I mean, I just seen a lot of people changed. I mean, come to know the Lord. But I can remember the time that God said to me, not audibly, of course, but he said, Gary, I'm gonna change your life. And man, he sure has changed my life. And it's all been through this subject of faith. And, so I would encourage anybody, to try to come to one of those sometime.
Hey,
We teach 6 times, play cornhole the rest. It's a win-win.
Hey, Madeline, did you have a question you wanted to ask Gary or the group, or did you want him to reach out to you privately?
You can answer in the group. The group is okay.
Oh, okay. Gary, the question is, how can I discover my purpose?
That's a great question, actually. I think even though we want to know purpose, I think that's really not the question to say, what is my purpose? When we ask why, we're asking what is the purpose, not is my purpose. So I think instead of asking purpose, that we simply live. Purpose is macro. It deals with what's my purpose of my life. That changes a lot. What I think we have to do, and this might not be a great answer, but what we have to do is say simply this: what's my purpose today? What's my purpose today? Because moments are made today, and I'll give you an example illustration. I use this sometimes. I spoke at an event in Nashville, Tennessee, and I live about 4 hours from Nashville, and I was going to have to speak at another event the very next day in Michigan. So I actually drove to Nashville, spoke at an event on a Friday night, Then I flew from Saturday morning to Michigan on Saturday morning, spoke that night to 500 men. And I'm not telling you this to brag, because I'm telling you, I'm not the evangelist. I mean, I think, listen, when I learned to preach, they put you on the street corner. When I went to Bible college, you had to preach on the street corner. You'd go, I went thinking I was Billy Graham. I left thinking I was Elmer Fudd. I mean, that's how bad I was. Okay. But so I go to Alpena, Michigan, I believe is where it's at. And there was like 500 men there. I mean, men. I mean, so much men. And so that night, over 100 and I forget, it was 120 or 140 people said they prayed to receive Christ for the first time. It was crazy. And my message was so simple. But here's what I'm getting to. So on the way back, I'm tired. I've spoke twice. Take a flight. I'm tired. So I fly out the next day. And I remember saying, God just sent me and put me in the back of the plane where nobody's around me. And, I just need to rest. And I do that. But God didn't listen to me. And he put me beside a very discouraged Korean pastor. And I spent an hour and 15 minutes encouraging a Korean pastor. Now, which one of those things that I did was more important to God? Was it to speak to 500 men and a lot of people come to Christ? Or was it to speak to one Korean pastor? Well, in God's eyes, it was all the same. See, what did I do today with what God has given me today? So I would say this, Madeline, just live your life today. And say, God, what are the opportunities you give me today? Because that's where your purpose is. It's in the micro and not the macro. Does that help any? And I'll say this too. It's a big relief when you do that. It's a big relief when you do that. Does that help any?
That's good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Just give a cup of cold water in Jesus' name today. And maybe tomorrow God will say, you got to speak to 500 people. And the next day it might be you're going to speak to 3 men or 3 women in a workplace. And it's day to day. I don't see anywhere in the Bible. I really don't. And I mean, we all read Purpose Driven Life for years. I don't see very many places in the Bible or any place where it says that you just need to go after your purpose. Now, it says God gives us gifts and we're to function within our gifts. But to me, I'm just telling you, I may be wrong. To me, when you look at the great commandment to love God with all your heart and your neighbors yourself, there's really no space for you, right? See, God's got you. The Holy Spirit's trying to grow you. And I think our responsibility is in the life of other people. So when I talk about what's my purpose, then for me, it got to where that seemed like a selfish ask. And I say that, I don't say that bad. I'm saying, what helped me was when I say, my purpose is people. So whatever that it looks like today, it might be different than what it looks like tomorrow. You're doing your purpose, Madeline. Right now, you're doing it day to day.
Man, Gary, I can speak to that a little bit right now. A lot of it has been, I get my mind fixated on these huge goals I have. You and I are a lot alike. These ministries and everything, and I lose sight of the present. And I've heard God telling me a lot lately, just like stay present, man. There's so much I can do here day to day, and I get overwhelmed like trying to do so many things. And in certain seasons here recently, he's been telling me, man, just stay grounded and stay present on me today. Like there's so many things I can do in my house with my kids and all these deals where I get to where I'm not living present. And that's been huge on my heart. And this message rocked me today, but just staying really present and really focused on God where, I'm seeing him in all the little things. And that seemed to help me a lot lately.
Good, Chase.
Anybody else? Well, it's been
Good
a good
seeing
morning.
everybody this morning.
Yeah, good seeing everybody. Thank you for showing up.
I see Shotgun Johnny on there.
I saw Shotgun Johnny. I saw him.
Yeah, I'm here. How's it going, boys?
Good, man. That's
Glad to be here.
You see, everybody see Jonathan and see Jeff over there. They are twins,
Hey,
and nobody will ever believe that.
It's true.
Jonathan got the looks and the brains. Jeff got the hair.
I also got that beautiful Sportsman 1100 shotgun a few years
There
back.
you go. Yeah, he was one. All right.
Good to see you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Anybody else? We'll get you out of here.
we're good.
Hey, listen, thank y'all again. We'll cut it off here, but get a hold of me. My phone number and everything's on the website. My email, of course, if you need to talk or whatever. I'm around.
Oh, guys, if
Thanks.
you
Appreciate the word.
Thanks,
Gary.
Anybody needs
Gary.
it, Jeff posted the website on the chat over here also, but it's outdoortruths.org.
And we also post this recording on the website under the
Tuesday Zoom. Yeah.
idea discussion.
Yeah.
So
Hey, Gary, also send me a list of who signed up. So
Yeah, I will. I'll let Jeff update it. I'll send it to you anyway. I'll text it to you.
that's fine. That's
All right.
all righty.
See you guys.
Thanks,
Hey,
guys.
appreciate y'all. See you.
guys. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a good week.
All right.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.